All right, good afternoon, class. I am back this afternoon. I wanted to put a few closing comments, or at least finish up and then put some closing comments on our topic for today. And this, I think, will be useful as you head into your assignment, which I am in the process of posting. It should be up here very soon in the early afternoon here. So today we were talking about the European Union and how it serves as a fitting microcosm of our world region of Europe as a whole. And there are aspects of the European Union that really speak to the circumstances that this world region has found itself in, particularly in light of changes in international power that have taken place over the past century. And so I'm just starting here with our title slide, and I hope you can sense here the tension that, in this supranationalism that Europe as a world region has displayed as a result, the European Union, the formation of the European Union is an example of this. Supranationalism has some tremendous benefits and promises, economic strength, political strength, cultural strength, but as is often the case with, oftentimes the reality is a mixed bag. So with this increased power and this strength in collectivity, there's also a drawback because one has to compromise, one has to come together, and oftentimes that can come at the cost of other things. So are these individual European nations sacrificing their sovereignty, or is that sacrifice excessive, thereby allowing the European Union to form, or is it a sacrifice that is well worth it? That's essentially the question we're asking today. Here are the objectives. I'm just going to click through these. If you want to refresh yourselves, you certainly may as we go. But we left off today talking about a few important steps along the way to the formation of the European Union, how it initially formed out of some trade blocks that were designed to sort of increase efficiency and profitability, particularly with critical strategic resources and products in the early post-war period, post-war meaning post-World War II. And through some of the early successes or the early opportunities that were realized there, Europe began to embark upon a path of greater integration and greater collectivization, which has found expression most recently in the formation of the European Union. Excuse me. So the unity here, it's worth noting that during the Cold War, the sense of the ties that bound Western European countries together were essentially the common sense that we are not Russia and we are threatened by the existence of, I guess we should say, the Soviet Union. But Europeans would have also referred to it as Russia because Russia has been around throughout much of European history. But the idea that Europe was defined, the countries of Europe were defined by their lack of interest or their lack of affinity, lack of solidarity with their neighbor to the east, the Soviet Union. After the Cold War, which came to an end in 1989 or 1991, depending on how you want to define it, Europeans increasingly took pride and identity through the fact that they were not the United States being the remaining superpower. And the European Union, among its many successes, has been that it has served as sort of a global counterweight to American economic and political influence. And a couple examples of this is, even though the United States has been reluctant to sign on to international treaties surrounding global climate change, Europe has been willing to do that, and in many respects, I think, in some ways they've been able to morally condemn or morally shame the United States for its failure to do what many people in Europe and many people throughout other parts of the world think is just what one should do, and that is to resist and become part of international efforts to try to fight global climate change and reduce global greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, that's one example. Another example is with the quote-unquote U.S. war on terror, European leaders, and here we have Jacques Chirac, uh, and we have European leaders who have come together and have essentially said, we are not going to follow the United States into its misguided war in Iraq. Most European countries did support the U.S. presence in Afghanistan, but many European countries chose to challenge the United States in terms of its commitments and its extensive presence in other elements of the war on terror. So a little bit about its unity there. Okay, so the key institutions. So the European Parliament, as I'll talk about in just a moment, the European Parliament is an international body. I guess we could also call it, we should maybe say, a supranational body that consists of European EU members. And the European Parliament is something really close to the United States House of Representatives in the sense that power in the European Parliament, the Parliament is composed of different districts of Europe. So like our House of Representatives, where we have, from any given state, multiple representatives who are determined by the people who live in certain voting districts. Well, Europe is divided up in a similar way for the purposes of determining its European Parliament. And what this means is that even though the European Union is one body that has some governing authority, it is in fact determined by population. So a country like Germany, which is much more populous than, say, Belgium, is going to have far more representatives in its European Parliament. Now there's also a European Commission, and the Commission consists of, it's like the senatorial class, and each country in the European Union can name its ministers to the European Commission. Okay, so it's like a bicameral legislature, somewhat similar to the way the United States works. Although one difference in the European Parliament is it doesn't make its decisions strictly based on majority rule. There are, for any decision, 55% of the countries in the European Union, they're parliamentarians, so they're members of the European Parliament. There have to be 55% of a given country to agree to an act before it will become a binding decision. And then also the overall percentage of votes is around 65%. So you need to have a supermajority, greater than a simple majority, to get things done. Another important institution is the European Economic Community Passport. This is, as we were talking about in the Schengen Accord, this essentially allows for the free flow of people. If you are a member of a given European country that's a member of the European Union, then you, by virtue of that fact, have the right of free travel to any member country. Finally, the euro, which trailed the formation of the European Union by several years, went into effect in 2002. And almost all European Union members have adopted the euro as their currency, but it's not true in all cases, and Great Britain being a critical exception to that. But these are all aspects of the European Union that serve to pull this world region of Europe together in its supranational character, and that's very unique. We don't have that in many other world regions. In fact, I can't think of a single other where that's happening. So how does the European Union determine who is a part of it? Well, first off, the European Union does not want to welcome into itself countries that are unable to demonstrate political stability. This is really important. The European Union prides itself and is also careful to place itself at risk by enrolling questionable members into its group. It also stresses democracy, so you have to have a tried and true history of democracy. They don't want to reward or further establish relationships with countries that are not democratic. Are you market-based? Do you have well-regulated banks that aren't going to place the euro as a currency, or the fiscal responsibility and fiscal solvency of the entire union at risk? This has been an incredibly noteworthy concern, particularly in the past 5 years since the Great Recession, because there's a handful of European Union members, countries like Italy and Spain, countries like Ireland, that have, and Greece, that due to their fiscal insolvency have created tremendous pain for other member countries, in particular Germany. Germany has a very healthy economy, but its healthy economy has been threatened by its membership in the European Union, where there are member countries that are not nearly as fiscally well off. And so what this has meant is Germans have had to bear the hardship and responsibility for helping shore up countries and economies that have not performed and have not behaved themselves as wisely and responsibly as the Germans have. Okay. And then you also have to submit to EU regulations. You have to be willing to accept certain laws or restrictions that come down from on high and are imposed upon you. And this is where some of that compromise comes in. Even though you like the fact that you have the strength in numbers, but this also means that you can't just do whatever you want to do. And some people are concerned that this represents an attack on European countries' sovereignty. And in some ways it does, but the whole question is, are the rewards enough to offset the drawbacks? Okay. Constitution, does your country uphold the rule of law, human rights, respect for minorities, so on and so forth? And then your support, you're going to give 1.27%, so almost 1.3% of your gross national income is going to be essentially like EU tax. That's what you pay to help support the institutions of the European Union. Okay? So today we're going to be looking in your assignment, I'm going to play you a brief documentary talking about Turkey. And what I want you to do is apply some of what we're learning about the European Union and the supranationalism of Europe, which the European Union represents. And I want you to look critically and look closely at what the case of Turkey has to say about it, and then answer some questions. So I'm going to post this screencast, and then I'm also going to follow that up by posting your assignment for tomorrow. All right, take care.